All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We see the people still entering the session, so we'll let it another minute to everybody to join the Zoom, and we'll kick off our great session today. We have a really great story to tell you about the customers that leveraging Amazon FS6 for NetApp ONTAP for his SQL databases. So just a couple of more moments to let everybody who wishes to join us today, and we'll kick it off. All right. So hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a great story to tell you about a customer that runs his SQL databases on AWS and leveraging Amazon FS6 for NetApp ONTAP for his deployment. But first, let's do a quick housekeeping before we go into the actual content. My name is Semyon Mazor. I'm a product enablement specialist in NetApp, and I will be the host for today. Together with me is also Rodrigo Gazanel, which is known as Gaza. Hi, Gaza. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hey, hi, Semyon. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Yeah, so I'm with Amazon Storage as a specialist. I am a go-to-market specialist aligned with the financial services. Been in Amazon for 3 years in some different roles, covering different territories, but focused on storage solutions in the cloud. Before that, I have a career in both United States and Latin America, focused on data storage solutions as well, pushed a lot of boxes across data centers, ran cables, right? So I hope I can relate with you in those adventures. Happy to be here. Happy to help share this great story from our customer that I will introduce next. And, welcome to you. I hope you're welcome and comfortable in asking questions and making this very productive for you.
Cool. Thank you, Gaza. And our special guest today is speaker Tim Gitchell. Tim, how are you today?
Doing good, thanks, Simeon. Yeah, I'm Tim Gitchell. I've been in technology for about 30 years, various roles from infrastructure to development to project management. Right now, I'm a fractional CTO for a couple of startups and also doing consulting. All of this is in the financial services sector. So for this project, I was a principal consultant for AdvisorEngine.
Thank you. And we're really glad to have you today to tell us the story that AdvisorEngine had for the databases. This session is streamed live and also recorded and will be available for you to see later on for all our attendees and the people who registered for this session. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel and drop them there. We will be happy to address it during the session or at the end. We'll have time for that. And also, it can be on any level, on the business level, on the very, very technical level. And for address your question, we also have here with us today Pedro Fernandez. Pedro, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure, Simon, sure. So my name is Pedro Fernandes. I'm Cloud Solutions Architect here at NetApp, and I'm focused only in one service, the Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. So today I will be answering your questions on the chat. So please don't miss anything. And if you have some doubts or some questions, just use the Q&A box. Thank you.
Cool. So what we have for today is a really, really quick intro just to align everyone. Make sure we all align on what is Amazon FS6 for ONTAP and what is the value proposition for databases. And then most of the session, we will have a team to tell us the story of AdvisorEngine and what the challenges they faced and how they overcome them and what was the outcome of that. And towards the end, we will have a sneak peek for a new, very cool automation tool for SQL deployment on AWS with FSx ONTAP, which is called BlueXP Workload Factory. So for those who are not familiar, Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP is a fully managed AWS storage utilizing the NetApp ONTAP as a native service within AWS. It provides intelligent data infrastructure for any workload, in particular for databases. It has a lot to offer.
Let me make a brief comment here, Simeon, right? So here on the Amazon side, Amazon FSx is our portfolio of fully managed storage, especially file solutions. I like to compare Amazon FSx, right, for those of you that are familiar with Amazon RDS, right, where what we do is that we turn something that is proven, right, that is widely utilized, and we turn that into a piece of our portfolio through the Amazon console. So in the web console or through all your familiar automation tools that Amazon makes available, you're going to be able to connect with a fully managed ONTAP experience, deploy volumes, create aggregates, create file systems, use block file, NFS, SMB solutions, right? So the idea is the best of both worlds. ONTAP, which you know and you appreciate and you understand the capabilities, and AWS console for deep integration, ease of use, and connectivity with other managed services like compute and managed databases and managed analytics that you may serve.
Cool. Thank you for that. And there's a bunch of different workloads that FSx for ONTAP can be utilized for. Today, we obviously are going to focus on database. And what it provides for database, it starts with high performance to make sure that your database is getting the low latency that you need, at least from the storage perspective. And of course, on AWS, you can do it from all other perspectives as well. Then it provides powerful protection to make sure you can meet your RPO and RTO no matter how strict they are. It also provides the ability to clone your databases, to create new database environments and perform database refresh quickly and with near zero additional cost. We will explain and elaborate on all those. And of course, it also helps you to reduce in cost by up to 50% with different technologies like thin cloning, option to lose fewer EC2 cores, and different storage efficiency technologies. So what we're going to discuss today is the story of AdvisorEngine, which, as we will summarize it before we go into to delve into the full story. Their challenge they faced was to streamline and scale the performance of their workload. And then we looked for an option to optimize cost for over 1,000 SQL databases. And they also wanted to improve the SaaS application resilience and data protection. So they found FSx for ONTAP, and the outcome is they improved the database performance 7 times. They reduced the cost by 50% at the same time, right? So improve performance 7 times and reduce cost by 50%. They enhanced the database protection, and they had faster database cloning for the staging environment. And this is what we are going to talk about today. Almost all our session are going to be to dedicate how this can be achieved, and Tim will take us to the details of that story. So without further ado, Tim, can you tell us a bit about AdvisorEngine, what they do, and what was the situation when you faced it?
Sure. Yeah, AdvisorEngine is a wealth management company that has several different products that they offer. As you can see there, they have a CRM system, which is what we'll focus on today. They have portfolio management and client onboarding tools, and they partner with a lot of different integration applications to provide various other services. But their clients, they have hundreds of advisory firms that are managing $500 billion plus in assets on the system. And the problem that they were having specifically with their CRM database is they had a self-managed SQL Server instance, actually two FCI instances for production that had all these 1,000 roughly databases split between each cluster. And this is the original architecture when I first came in. They had nodes running in dual availability zones, and they had another region with another node for each cluster. And what they were running into is they had performance issues. They had, during certain times of the day, the latencies got to be unacceptable. They were having issues with the replication of the data to the DR side. It would often get out of sync, fall behind. They had to deal with a third-party Windows SANless cluster application vendor to be able to fix these issues. So they had a lot of pain points, and they could see that as their business was growing, they're adding new firms, that they were going to have to scale up this solution if they didn't do anything to fix these issues. And the next step would be to like double their infrastructure, have to add additional cluster with additional complexity, or they'd have to double the size of the EC2 instances and the EBS volumes and all the things that were supporting this. So that was kind of where they were at, and I came in and did a complete discovery of the system and put in some monitoring tools, tracking tools to kind of get a baseline. Ran things like dbHammer to get transaction per minute counts on the existing architecture, and then set about to try to come up with a better architecture that would perform better and possibly be more cost effective.
All right, so the situation of like growth on one hand of the service and the application, and the other hand challenge of the performance, and those two doesn't come together, and then you're trying to evaluate. So what do you see? What did you see from the performance aspect?
Yeah, when we dug into the performance issues, it became clear pretty quickly based off of the monitoring and the testing that the file system was the main culprit behind the issues. It was obvious that it was a problem for the replication to the DR region, and the stability wasn't all that great. But even just the daily workloads in the production environment were suffering because all of the load that was needed to keep the file system in sync was taxing the processing and disk channels and things on the primary nodes, and they were fighting SQL Server Engine for those resources. Yeah, so here is a performance comparison that I did. Started in their QA environment, which was just a scaled down version of production. It was configured exactly the same. This on the left is a transaction per minute chart. And as you can see, it's very peaky and inconsistent. And as the resources are being pulled away to keep the file system in good standing, the SQL Server responses were dropping. And then when I re-architected it to the new architecture we'll look at in a minute, the one in the middle is the same infrastructure in terms of the EC2 sizes and types, but you can see that by replacing the file system, that the transactions per minute went way up, and it's just very steady. There's not all these peaks and valleys. And then on the far right is the actual production system, which is again a scaled up, just larger EC2 instances, slightly higher throughput on the FSX for ONTAP, and those are the kind of values that you can see.
Okay,
Perfect.
so Yeah, go ahead.
No, I had one question, Simeon, just one quick comment here. So, of course, tremendous benefit of, adopting FSX. My question is, how did you come across FSX? Did you have, did AdvisorEngine had any experience before? What were the alternatives that you're looking at?
Yeah, that's a good question. This was a little over 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago in August that this was put into place. So a little bit before that, when all this discovery was taking place. And I researched lots of different options, and I came across a white paper on the AWS site that specifically mentioned using FSXN for a SQL Server file system, and it looked really promising. So it was one of the things that I tried. I built several different proof of concepts. I tried the FSX for Windows. I tried just getting the latest version of the Windows-based file system to see if it would fix the issues. But so I tried several different things, but the FSX for ONTAP was clearly superior, and it was the least expensive at the same time. So that was kind of a no-brainer to make that choice.
Interesting. Let's take a look at the architecture then. Or Semyon, do you have anything else to add?
I think I just like, it's really cool to say that you had no previous experience. Like, there's the myth of ONTAP is for FSX ONTAP is for those who knows ONTAP as well. And in your case, it wasn't the case. Like, you weren't.
Yeah, I had heard of NetApp, and I had, like a good overall impression of the company, but I did not even know that there was a managed solution at the time on AWS, and I had no personal experience with NetApp at all when I started this project. So it was very easy to pick up. The managed instance helped a lot, and the way that they exposed the ability to do your own customizations also really helped in the final product.
All right.
Great point.
So how can you lead us through the revised architecture with FSX ONTAP?
Sure. Okay, so what I did is I kept 2 nodes in the primary region, different availability zones, and I upped it to 2 nodes in the DR region. And as you see in this diagram, they're inactive. Because one of the things that's really key to this new architecture is that you're really separating the compute from the storage. So you get this kind of separation of concerns where you can really optimize your compute layer and optimize your storage layer independently, and they work together really well because I've got a multi-AZ FSX for ONTAP cluster in both regions, and it's responsible for keeping all of the data in sync for high availability and for SnapMirror for DR protection in the other region. And the nodes don't have to worry about any of that. They're just connecting to the cluster via standard iSCSI interface. And I'm using FCI on SQL primarily because we have so many databases. Once you get into hundreds of databases per instance, if you don't use FCI, you start running out of worker threads and you get all kinds of issues. But it's really a good solution anyway, even besides that, because it's very simple, it's well proven, it works great. So what we did is we set up just a simple single aggregate, single volume for the data, another volume for the logs. All of the tempDB and stuff is on just ephemeral storage on the EC2 instances. So that's another thing is since we were able to really tailor the EC2 instances we wanted to use and weren't concerned about how much IO bandwidth they had or how much I could focus on something that had a lot of ephemeral storage and the right amount of memory. And so I could really fine tune all of that and not worry about having to get stuck on a specific instance type that I didn't really want for those purposes. So now you've got the 2 active nodes for high availability, and then if you fail over, there's scripting that brings up the nodes within a couple minutes, they come up and they'll attach to the storage on the DR side once it's been quiesced and set to read write. And you can fail over seamlessly to DR in about 4 or 5 minutes and be up and running with no more than 5 minutes of data loss if you had a true DR event. And then on the high availability side, it fails over in less than a minute to the different AZ. And of course, the ONTAP cluster has its own failover between the two availability zones. So if you completely actually lost an availability zone, everything would fail over. But if something just happened on the file system side, it could fail over independently. Something just happened on the compute side, it could fail over independently. So all that just works. You don't have to worry about it because you get this real good separation there.
Hey, Tim,
Go
right.
ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
No, I just find it, fantastic, right? How it is, that you're mentioning about simple and you don't have to worry. I love the, how many times you say you don't have to worry. But if you look behind the scenes, right, AdvisorEngine is using the full breadth of the AWS infrastructure underneath, right? We have in region high availability across AZs, right? Both on primary and on secondary, right? If you translate that to an on-premises world, if you're familiar with that, that's like having metro clusters, right? And this is all built in with the service transparent to you, right? And then you have the high availability architecture that you built on with SQL Server, leveraging this capability, right? Which is the fail-safe cluster. You use AWS region again. You go to another region to have a quorum, right? So it keeps the entire architecture highly available and leveraging the power of these distributed resources infrastructure. So hard to reflect that, in an on-premises. How many buildings, how many data center facilities would you need, right? So that's another advantage of combining the power of Amazon and FSx in NetApp, in my opinion. I do have a question, right? And I think maybe it's related to the time frame that you started this solution. You mentioned that it started a couple of years ago, and of course, Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP is only 3 years old, so it's kind of a young service. You built your DR with multi-AZ high availability as well, right? We have in Amazon FSx now the option to do this if a single AZ deployment. You have highly availability, but the replication happens within a single AZ, right? Would you take a look at this if you were, for instance, cost constrained, or were you under a requirement to have a DR that really had the QA or equal capability as the production?
Yeah, so it was definitely constrained by what was available at the time, of course, but we could see that there was going to be such a high cost savings and then a cost avoidance from not having to scale up. I mean, multiple 6 figures a year of savings, that I wasn't as concerned about that specific issue, because I really wanted, if we did fail over, I wanted the failover to be on par with the primary region. And actually they're planning on doing a failover and stay type scenario where they, on scheduled basis, they fail over and make the other region primary for a period of time and reverse the DR to the other region. So it's already well set up to handle that because it's identical.
Tremendous. And I think it's also on point on the cost advantage that you perceive, right? It enabled you to build an even more resilient infrastructure, right? And improve and increase the service levels compared to what you had previously.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about, you don't have to worry about things, like things are easy. If you come in as a consultant, that's a really top of mind, because you don't want to create this complex house of cards that, requires all this hand holding and worrying about things breaking and falling down. You want something that's really solid, that, you're not going to get called back, or they're not going to have to spend a lot of money to maintain it. The original architecture was built by a full-time DBA that they had And that was one of the other reasons is that DBA left shortly before this project started. So, and they have yet to hire another full-time DBA because the system is just so rock solid. They haven't really had to worry about it. So that's a key factor.
Awesome.
I wanted to ask you to touch upon like you showed this graph with the performance that mostly was impacted by the third-party replication. So can you touch upon the replication like before and after?
Yeah, the replication before, the main difference from a user or a consumer or like a DevOps perspective was the pain point with the DR replication. That was the biggest difference that was clearly visible, is because the DR was set to, I think, 15 minutes, something like that. And it would routinely just fail and go down. And then you wouldn't have a DR, or it would get behind if they did some large batch updates to the data. It would, stretch out and it would be behind 30 minutes or so. But with the ONTAP system with the SnapMirror, it's set to 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes there is an update to the DP volume on the downstream region, and it has never gone down and it's never gotten behind. So it's always just been rock solid. Not have to worry about it anymore. We know that if there's a true DR event, they're not losing any more than 5 minutes worth of data, and they can switch over and be up in just a few minutes.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome. I think it leads the question to the 50% cost reduction. Where is this cost reduction coming from?
Yeah, the cost reduction is a very multifaceted thing. The biggest savings and cost ongoing is the cost avoidance of having to scale up, which is not even included in that reduction. But when you look at originally they had to have the DR nodes running 24/7 because they were responsible for keeping the data on that side in sync. Now those are normally off, so they're not incurring charges. The ability to scale the IO and have the over provisioning of the resources. So you've got a relatively small aggregate that's serving 6-7 times the amount of data that it physically actually has. So there's just the cost compared to the EBS volumes is significantly less. They had some licensing things where those secondary nodes were actually licensed AMIs. So they were paying per CPU on those DR boxes that were just sitting there replicating data. That's all they were doing, but they're paying full SQL Enterprise license on all those. So that's saved a lot. So there's a lot of things that went into it, but ONTAP was a good portion of that, just straight up, and it certainly was a key foundation that allowed a lot of these other things that added on to that added up to the 50% total.
I appreciate it, Tim, and I like the holistic view of that, cost savings. I think sometimes, we can look at a pricing in the cloud because everything is metered, right? Everything is provided as a service tier, right? And, the ability to look at the aggregated performance, the ability to look at the aggregated impact, to think about a solution, is really what matters in this situation over here. You call out the space efficiency, and the database use case is not always an easy one, right? But because you have a complex environment with DR, right, and data protection, that's when you're able to realize. I see on the picture there, you illustrate that you have a backup process as well. Can you describe a little about that backup process, how you implemented it?
Yeah, the original system used native backups and went to a Windows file server using the large EBS volumes to store the backups. So I switched them to a third-party backup solution called Lightspeed, and it can back up the databases using its own proprietary compression and encryption, and it can stream directly to S3 buckets natively. So it makes it a lot simpler, and it works really, really well, and it reduces the cost, excuse me, of the backups storage significantly, because you can set up all the policies to, after a certain amount of time, it cleans up stuff and it moves things into Glacier and things like that. So the storage cost of the backups, even though we increased the amount of retention, went way down.
Awesome.
Excuse me. So in this one here, I mean, once we had all that set up and working, and really started realizing what we had in terms of the file system and some of the features that we weren't really utilizing, it's like, well, hey, we can take and easily create a snapshot of the volume and create basically an ephemeral instance of the production server. Just within a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, we can have an exact duplicate of everything just up and running. So it's like, okay, how can we leverage that? So the first thing that we did to leverage it was, let's do backups offline. Instead of having to worry about the backup window and what other jobs are running and what loads are happening there, we just put the backups over in the DR region. And so when the time for backups come, these backup EC2 instances get started by an event bridge schedule that kicks off a Lambda function that starts the instances. And then they have a bunch of scripting on them when they start up, that they self-provision the snap clone of the DP volume and make it read-write, connect to it via iSCSI, do a few things to clean up because they're, the server name is different and things like that. But then when they start up, it's just like production was a few minutes ago, and it actually runs the backups over there. So you have zero impact on the production side at all. But you can do all your backups, you can do all your integrity checks and all those things over there offline. And then when it's done, it automatically copies back over like all of the backup metadata to MSDB and to the Lightspeed repository. So it looks like to the backup console, like the backup has actually happened on production, but they happened over here offline. And when it's done with that, it cleans itself up and drops the snap mirrors and shuts down. So those instances, those EC2 instances, are only running during the backup time window, and that's it.
Yeah. And Tim, there's a great aspect of the backup and the DR architectures that you design, in my opinion, which is leveraging, this on-demand nature of the cloud, right? When you go and you take a backup that you just described, you only instantiate the backup servers, right, for the time necessary, and then you shut them down. So, your ability to reduce costs with this intelligent approach to compute is a win in the cloud, right? Same as your DR, right? You were talking about that. The moment that you make your ER part of a storage workflow and no longer a compute workflow, your DR instances can be shut down, right? So you don't need to have those instances turned on, because you're not using their processing power to keep getting the blocks and writing to disk. You're doing this at FSX, and it translates to me as additional cost savings opportunities, because you're leveraging the on-demand nature of the cloud so intelligently.
Thank you. But yeah, it's worked out really well. And it also allows you to do things that you may not even be able to do before. Like, we can do a full validity check on every database every night. We can do a full backup verification. So every single backup is verified every single night. So it makes a little bit longer backup window, but since you're completely out of band from production, it doesn't matter. You can get those extra things that you maybe wouldn't realistically be able to even do without that kind of a pattern.
Out of band, on demand.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what's also nice in this case is to see the different ways you can use FS6 ONTAP. Like, I think that this is not the traditional way, or the first way that we usually recommend to use, because FS6 ONTAP offers the application aware snapshot, which usually would be operated with Snap Center. And I think Pedro investing many of his time that is here over the chat to help customers, like to operate it with Snap Center, etc. But in this case, you wanted to do it in a different way to meet the goals, and you can do that as well. So it's also to see the different options you have, both in operating it and how you achieve the goals that you want.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of different options in terms of how you would configure a system like this, and obviously each has their pros and cons. But yeah, we are considering moving to Snap Center. This was, again, it was over 2 years ago, and Snap Center wasn't as rich and robust as it is solution as it is now. Didn't necessarily have the knowledge base then, so it was kind of an easier decision to not use it at the time. But it does have a lot of advantages as well. As you mentioned, the application aware snapshots make a big difference.
All right. Anything else that we have to question about backup and your aspects?
I think there was a question here that Pedro and I were working on about details on the backup architecture, right? So I think it was a little more on light speed, and we're welcome to continue to support the answers here on Q&A. But I think the point is that this architecture, right, using light speed was your choice, an intelligent one, very efficient. It integrated with SQL Server backup operations, so it enables the DBA to still look at from a catalog. There are many other data protection solutions available on FSX. There is Snap Center that you mentioned, Tim, that you are considering right now. And to the audience, if you're curious about a particular data protection solution, you're welcome to continue to ask questions or extend the conversation. But I really appreciated the topic coming up here. Super important when it comes to storage, right? Goes hand in hand with backups, data protection, and disaster recovery.
Yeah, and Lightspeed was actually used as the migration mechanism when we migrated from the old architecture to the new architecture. So back everything up to S3 using Lightspeed on the old architecture, restore everything using Lightspeed to the new architecture, and cut over. That was the mechanism. So it helped with that. That obviously would not something you couldn't even do with Snap Center. So that's another reason.
Yeah. And it does create one beautiful, very familiar term that we hear now, the 3-2-1-1 kind of solution, right? With the copies, to different medias, to different sites, right? So it does execute well on the recommended data protection architecture for all of us practitioners.
So there's a couple of unique capabilities that are relevant for that were used to what we discussed so far. For example, being a shared block storage across availability zones. And another one that I mentioned in the beginning is the thin cloning, utilizing flex clone. So can you tell us more about how you use this capability and how it helps AdvisorEngine?
Yeah, the flex clone. Once we did the backups, it's like, well, how else can we leverage this pattern? Because being able to have quickly an exact duplicate of a production that is offline and you can do what you want with is pretty powerful. So like, well, how else can we leverage this? It's like, well, let's create a staging environment that we can use for release testing and for data protection in terms of, like, if somebody on the client side deletes data they shouldn't have, we can bring up this staging environment within just a few minutes as of whatever time we want and go in and get the data. So created these staging EC2 instances that work similar to the backup. They get kicked off every early Monday morning, and then when they come up, they provision a clone, a flex clone of the volumes, and they come up as a copy of production. And then the DevOps team and the developers can use that for whatever, staging type workloads that they need to do. Late Friday, it shuts itself down and cleans everything up. So it's not running over the weekend, unless they can bring it up on demand as well, but it's not running when it's not being used. So it saves money, and it refreshes the data every week. And they can refresh it on demand as well. But if they do nothing, it's just going to continually every week have a new refresh copy of production that they can do anything they want to and not worry about affecting production. And it will always clean itself up so that you don't have these long running snap mirror block buffers that just grow and grow.
How it worked with the original architecture? Like, how was the process for the staging environment before?
Yeah, originally they just didn't have that capability, short of actually restoring just specific targeted databases to another server, which was usually running all the time, even if they weren't using it. And it took a long time to actually do the restores, and it just was not the same experience at all. So this just allows them to do a lot more than they were able to do in the past.
Yeah, well, one of the things that, like, it's, as I mentioned, it's a new capability for ONTAP, and like what's nice about it that there's no actual data movement, just using the pointer, because it's snapshot based, so it doesn't add a significant capacity and doesn't add significant cost on one hand, and the other hand, it also shortens the development cycle. So it's nice to see also how it fits into this architecture and actually helps in the development process, in the CI/CD pipeline.
Yeah, and the way that whenever you bring up the flex clone, that it doesn't take any additional space until you actually start changing the data, is awesome, which is obviously why it's so fast. I mean, it's literally seconds over, a terabyte of data, and it's amazing. It works really, really well.
This is fantastic, Tim. Do you have just for the audience here, do you have an idea about the size of the databases that you snap frequently? Are they like a multi-terabytes range, or?
The databases range drastically because it's a database per tenant, per client, and some clients are pretty small, some are large. So they vary up to, I think the largest ones are in the 400 or 500 gigabytes for a single database. But across all the databases, each instance has a little under 2 terabytes of total databases. And since there's so many databases, it's really difficult, unless you're really targeting a specific use case, to like duplicate specific databases. That's why I just simply take a snapshot of the whole volume, which has all the databases for that particular cluster. And I don't worry about it. If I don't need the databases, it's fine. They don't take up any space. I'm not changing the data. It's just, it doesn't matter. So whatever databases I'm focused on, I'm changing data there. It's adding a little bit of extra temporary block storage while that flex clone is active, and then it goes away and cleans up. So just do it all.
And it's true. You said that you don't have to worry about the databases that you're not effectively cloning, because that's exactly what happens with ONTAP, right? If you're not changing specific block, right, it's just a pointer operation, right? So it's not just a consideration, it's actually the technical capability of ONTAP that makes it viable.
Right. Yeah,
Awesome.
and the built-in deduplication and compression and encryption means that the SQL Server engine doesn't have to worry about any of that. I can turn off always encrypted, take that load off of the compute and off the concern of the SQL Server itself. Don't have to worry about the actual size of the aggregate. Let the file system worry about that with cloud alerts and things and automatic growing as it needs to. But as far as the SQL Server is concerned, you know, it's got 2 or 3 terabytes of extra space, and it's never going to run out. So you don't have to way over provision that, and you don't have to mess with it. You just have to keep your aggregate scaled appropriately, which is easy to do through the alerts and auto scaling things.
Tim, can you share a bit about the operational side of things, not just for the staging and the cloning, for the whole thing, like how you deployed FS6 ONTAP, how you manage the process, how the team does it since then?
Originally, I just did it all manually through the portal. And then certain things that I needed to do that weren't originally included in the portal, I connected by SSH directly to ONTAP and just use CLI commands to do things. And upon doing all that, it's kind of how I learned what I needed to do for the scripting to make all this stuff more automated. So that's what the scripting does, is it's actually a PowerShell script that runs on the instance when it comes up, and it will SSH to the ONTAP manager and run certain CLI commands to, like, you know, provision the snap mirrors and change the IG groups and things like that that need to happen for it to be able to properly connect over iSCSI, and all the cleanup and things that happen. So that was all really easy to do because, like I mentioned earlier, you know, it's not just a closed managed service, it's an open managed service that a lot of the things, all of the main things that you need to see and do are exposed through the portal, but anything else that may not be exposed to the portal, you can still do and you can get to just by going directly into this file system.
Cool. And kind of question a question with reason, but would it be useful for you if there was a tool that you can do it all, like, automatically?
Yeah, that would be awesome. You know, if what's available now is available then, it would certainly been a lot easier to get to where we are now. But yeah, it would been awesome just to be able to have a lot of these patterns already there and already defined in a tool that can orchestrate all that for you. I mean, we've done some Ansible scripts and things like that orchestrate some of the infrastructure stuff, but having, you know, an outside managed service that can orchestrate that would be awesome.
Right. So I would like to share with our audience that today there is such a tool. Like, it wasn't available when Tim did the deployment, but there is such a tool. It's called BlueXP Workload Factory. And I would like to take the couple of next minutes to demo it for you. It's a free of charge. It's a free of charge service available for you. Let me just change to the different screen. Yeah. It's available on this link, console.workloads.netapp.com, and you can operate it without providing any credentials, at least to start with, and then as your trust grows, you can let Workload Factory do things on your behalf. The purpose of this service is to make the operational of workloads on FS6 ONTAP automated and implement best practices automatically. So if you don't have team or doing it for you, you can use Workload Factory. And there's a different workload that's supported by Workload Factory. We, of course, today will focus on databases. So it starts with deployment options, and we don't talk here specifically just about the storage aspects, but on the whole workload, on the whole stack of the workload, including the compute and the database itself. So there's a wizard to deploy SQL, Microsoft SQL Server. You can choose quick or advanced create, go through the different parameters, including the region and VPC, the application setting for the database itself, the connectivity, then the ONTAP information and a summary. You can go through more details with the advanced create. And what's nice that if I provided the service with credential to my AWS account and click on create, it just will deploy it, automatically embedding all the relevant compute databases and storage. And other option is just to use it from the code box, which is automatically implementing the different parameters that I set in the wizard. And then I just can copy and paste it into the existing workflows. So there's also an option, and you don't even need to provide any credential to use that. You can also save configuration to get back to it later. So this is for to deploy the database. Other things that I can do, and maybe as a first step, is to explore savings. So I can open the inventory that I have, see different details of the existing deployments, information like the host that I have, the distribution of them, and go into specific details of each instance. And then I can open and go to explore savings. It can be for specific deployment that I have, or for just manually enter parameters and to see how much it would cost on FSx ONTAP comparing to other storage services. And it will detail all the information within it, within this deployment, all the details, all the breakdown, as transparent as it can be. If FSx ONTAP doesn't provide cost savings, it also shows that as well. I can go into the whole different assumption and parameters that Workload Factory took into account. I can export it as PDF to share with other stakeholders or for myself. And it's a nice place to start with to explore the cost savings. As we already said, it can be significant. Another option is to create clones. As we said, here they are called sandboxes. So also there's kind of nice dashboard to see the information about existing clones. And then there's also option to create new environments. Just need to provide the database source, the target information, the mount options that I would like to choose, and add the tag. And also here again, option to use the code box to automate this process as well. So this is a very nice tool to make the operations aspect more easy. And just wanted to share with the audience that we have today on the call. You can do it easily by going to console.workloads.netapp.com and try it by yourself. It's free of charge. So going back to our deck, I think that like your story is just one great example of how FSx from ONTAP can help when you're deploying MS SQL in this case, but the same applies for other databases as well. Gaza, would you like to add something?
No, at this moment, I think you talked about use cases. Database is one use case that we see happening a lot, right? Like I mentioned, while ONTAP is established and mature, been on the market for decades, Amazon FSx is not. It's only 3 years old. And in Amazon, what we do, right, we have this concept about working backwards, right? Meaning we work from what our customers require from us. So FSx has been one great example, right? We have been offering storage in the cloud in different technologies, native technologies, and some well-established and known technologies. ONTAP was a requirement. We saw more and more customers being successful with enterprise-grade capabilities that ONTAP serves, willing to have them equivalent in the cloud. So we are able to partner with ONTAP and bring this solution together. The evolution continues, right? And it's based on the feedback we receive from our users. And there's a lot of innovation happening on both AWS and NetApp. Workload Factory is a great example, right, of the innovation happening on ONTAP to try to break the barriers that, hey, it can be complex. There are too many variables to change, right? The cloud is really powerful when it comes to tuning, but the good thing is that you can continuously improve your deployment. You're always improving as your workload evolves, as your requirements evolve, right? You can always be changing and also adopting new capabilities that are launched little by little. And finally, just to end this monologue here, really want to thank team and the AdvisorEngine team for trusting on AWS and our partnership with NetApp with your most critical digital asset that you have.
Yeah, thank you for that, Gaza. Before we go to the Q&A part, I would like to point a couple of available resources there. So as we said, Workload Factory is available to use. And if you would like to have a call with an expert to continue the conversation about FS6 ONTAP, how it can help your deployment, maybe help with Workload Factory or any other aspects related to your process, you're welcome to use the QR code on the slide. There's also a couple of other resources, and there's also a page for the AdvisorEngine customer story. It doesn't go into the same details we covered today, but there is some summary of the story, and also other resources for more information about FS6 ONTAP and databases. You're welcome to use those resources as well. And let's see if we have any questions that we would like to address, or Tim, if you have something else that you would like to highlight and mention.
No, but if we have any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are no questions open on the Q&A queue. Pedro has been doing an amazing job, but we still have a few minutes to address anyone that is coming. And while we are here and we only have a couple of minutes left, let me do a shameless plug. So we're going to be back, AWS and NetApp, in 2 weeks, and we're going to have a similar webinar. But this time we're also going to cover Workload Factory, but this time we're not going to be focused on databases with FSx. We're going to be talking about generative AI and how the power of FSx can help. I'm going to ask this V to share the link for registration if you're curious on the topic. But it's just a topic that has been so hot through the year that, in many cases, we get too focused on the use case and forget about what we truly need to be successful with AI, which is data, right? And this is what AWS and NetApp can do very well together. So if you're curious, just take a look at the page. And if you have questions, you can continue the conversation, use the QR code and reach out to all of us to help you.
I think one comment and question that always arises is, actually there's two. One is about the self-managed option. So yeah, FS6 ONTAP is here, like, offer all that for self-managed databases, and we focused here today on SQL. And there's commonly a question about other databases. So for self-managed database, you can install your own databases and choose whatever version of the database you prefer. And so the same benefits applied for any other database that your organization use. So it's also there's no limits on this aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Oracle, Postgres, right? If you need an engine and you're building your infrastructure on AWS, right? Consider that the infrastructure is going to be fully managed in this scenario, and you're going to have flexibility to operate and manage your platform, right? And of course, AWS being this large portfolio of cloud services, there are also fully managed database services, right? That some DBAs like to use, right? But here, we are talking specifically about the situation when we are deploying and managing our own databases, and there are many legitimate reasons why that is going to be your strategy moving forward. Just like there are other reasons why some other organizations or some workloads in your environment might be interested in fully managed databases as well.
And I'm assuming you could also utilize ONTAP on an on-prem basis and have that snap mirrored into the cloud. So you could have DR in the cloud that's being facilitated by ONTAP, and do some of these patterns with not just between regions in the cloud, but between on-prem and the cloud.
100%.
All right, so we're also over now a minute over our time. So I would like to thank you, Tim. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for sharing the story. And thank you, Gaza, for your help here. And to Pedro for your help in the chat. And to you for running the session. And of course, thank you for all attendees for being with us today.
Thank you. Talk to you all later.
Thank you so much, Simeon, Gaza, team. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.